Are you ready to stop the self-sabotage and create the life you desire? Well, in order for that to happen, you need to break free from the bad beliefs that are holding your success hostage. You need to optimize the stress by turning it into extra energy for success. And those hurtful habits? Well, we need to give that pain a purpose for progress. Welcome to Stop the Self-Sabotage and Create the Life You Desire podcast.
I have a question for you. Which one of these do you think shows up more frequently in your life? Fight, flight, freeze, or appease? And that last one, appease, is also known as the fawn response. Okay, so Angie, when you hear fight, flight, freeze, appease, as the women who are listening to us think about which one they feel like shows up and keeps them stuck more often, when you hear all of that, what do you think of?
Well, for me personally, which one?
Just in general, what do you think?
Well, I mean, those are the ways that we react. We can fight. I have always been more of a fighter, personally. If I feel challenged, I don't usually back down. I'll confront and fight, put my dukes up or whatever. Or when I think of flight, I think of when I first got married to my husband, Steve, and I have a more overpowering energy in some ways, even though I'm the female, and he might want to flee and say, well, we'll talk about this later, if there was some sort of altercation. So to me, that's fleeing, you just want to get the hell out of Dodge,
Mm-hmm.
And then freeze is, we don't know what to do. It's sort of a traumatic response of, we don't know what to say. We don't know maybe even how to feel. It's sort of like a numbing out type of thing. We're frozen. And like in case of abuse or whatever, I mean, it doesn't have to be a big trauma, like a rape or something where we're just frozen in time, but emotionally frozen. And appease, that's the fawn, like you said, it's like people pleasing, let me stay safe. So I'll tell you what you want to hear, not what I really think and feel in order to stay safe. So those are my initial reactions.
Okay. Melinda, what do you think about when you hear fight, flight, freeze, appease?
So when I hear of those four things, fight, flight, appease, or freeze, it's valid. They're all very valid emotions that many of us experience throughout our lifetime. And we could experience one of them or many of them. Some of it is caused from trauma in our childhood. But if you think back, I think it takes me back to the thought of the caveman day when it was really the fight or flight mode. We needed it back then. It's not always a bad thing because it can protect us. When we was back in the caveman day and we seen an animal, do we fight it? Do we need to eat? Is it something we approach, or do we run from it? Do we fear that it could take our life? A lot of these emotions today, back in the caveman day, we used to physically work every day. We was able to work off the stress. In today's society, we don't work off our stress in quite the same way. So we need to find new ways to work that stress off, because we're always going to, it comes up and we have, I won't get into the brain right now, but we have this, hey, do we fight or flight? What's going on here? We have something, danger, and it alerts us to fear. And it's dependent on how we handle that fear that's important. We can say, oh, no, it's okay. Or we can surf the wave and say, okay, this is a valid fear. How am I going to deal with it? if we fear it, we have chemicals that are dumped on us that release. If we can ride out that anxiety for just about 15 to 20 minutes, we can create a different pathway in our brain that's positive. If we
Spiraling up.
Yeah, if we continue to have that fear, we just continue to reroute the same pathway that can keep us in one of these four modes.
Yes. And so, Angie, what you said as far as, oh my gosh, I'll stick to my ground, I'll hold true to what I believe in. And then, Melinda, what you said, that the fear is trying to alert us to something, and how are we going to use it? Yes, both of those are valid. So, by the way, welcome to today, which is freedom from fear and feeling like a failure. What I want to share is the fear acute or is it chronic? Is the fear from the part of our brain that is developmental or adaptive? So if it is acute, like we're walking across the parking lot and we hear steps come up behind us, well, unless we're expecting a friend to surprise us, we can get a little nervous. That is acute fear. And yet we need to be able to do something about that. But when it's chronic, when we're stuck in those neural pathways that spiral down, that's when we have a challenge, because we're not adapting on how to use the fear. And it's typically because we're coming from the developmental side of our brain, which was between birth and, for women, 17 to 18. Guys, it's a little bit longer. We all know that. It's usually late 20s. But it was when we were developing a learned either reaction or response to fear based on watching others in our environment. Because after age 18 months to 2 years, fear, unless it's acute, which is instinctual, which says, am I in danger? Any long-lasting fear after that, it becomes chronic because it was a learned response from watching, or a reaction from watching someone else. And reactions are based in suffering. And we have to learn how to use that fear to give it a purpose. And then it'll be painful, but it moves us through the situation. It goes from reaction to response or response able. So in moving your clients, Angie, from chronic fear, which was unfortunately learned during the developmental stages, and moving into adaptive, that part of the brain where we can actually use the fear. What do you like to do with your clients, or what do you like them to know around the fear that can actually have them begin to use it?
I think that the fear is in the body. I mean, it's like a somatic experience. And so I think we should start there. And, whether we do that through hypnosis or other things like tapping technique or energy techniques, other energy techniques, just to help, learn to embody their body instead of running from it and running from their feelings, because we do naturally want to get away from fear and I don't want to feel this, So I think a key thing here is to learn to stay with ourselves,
Okay.
not to abandon ourselves and when things get tough.
Yes.
And because it's a natural response, to want to get away.
Because that's what, Melinda, that's what you were saying earlier, right? With the different chemicals that's being produced in the body. So it's a physical then action that we need to take to be able to handle those chemicals, which, Angie, that goes back to the energy work you're talking about.
And to take our hand off the hot stove, because it's like our hands on the hot stove in those moments. And we know there's another way. We consciously know that, but yet in the moment, it's hard to shift, but it's possible to shift, and like you were saying, to form that new neural pathway.
Mm-hmm.
To do a redirect of some sort, to redirect the energy. If you can be aware in that one moment when it's happening and then redirect it somehow, then we can start to move out of that.
So what I hear you saying is they need to be aware of their triggers and have a couple of new responses available for when they get triggered. Because if they wait till they're in the moment to try to figure out what to do, it's not going to work.
Right.
Okay. So Melinda, what do you typically tell your clients or like to do with them whenever they're going into a fear reaction?
So there's a few things, and I completely agree with Angie. There's a few things I like to do. One is be curious about fears and emotion. Be curious about it. Where is it at in your body? How are you feeling it? What type of feeling is it? Just be curious about that. I like to use hypnosis and counseling as tools. Those, to me, they're tools that I like to use together. And with counseling, I like to give you coping skills, breathing techniques that you can start to learn now, so that when we're in the moment, it's hard to say, okay, take this calming breath. I'm in a panic. I'm not going to take that calming breath. My mind can't even function at this point because I'm in what we call a beta state, a fight or flight mode, right? And now you're telling me to think outside of that narrow-minded mode. And when I'm in beta, I'm very narrow-minded, right? I can't in the room and think of a way to solve this problem, because now I'm in that fight or flight. So what am I going to do? I like to try to teach the breathing techniques ahead of time and have you use them every day and start to practice them so that it starts to come automatic. This can be an emotion that if we learn how to turn it on and off, it will serve us when we are in that panic. I like to use metaphors in hypnosis. If you think back of when you was a baby, do you remember that fear you experienced when you tried to get up and walk? The fear of falling? I don't. I don't even know if I had the fear, but there was a determination there, a strength and a determination that drove you forward, because maybe you wanted to get to that thing that was sitting on the table, whatever it was, it drove you to succeed. That is still within you. You have that strength and determination, and we have just forgotten that we have that. And we need to find that strength and determination again. And the tools, the coping skills, and hypnosis can all be tools to rediscover the strength that we have to get up and continue to go forward. We have obstacles in our life. Right now, I could tell you I have a great fear of speaking on this podcast, right? But I'm pushing myself to go forward because I have the determination to continue to grow and to continue to be the best possible self I can be. If we don't go forward, we stay stuck. So we have to find those tools to help us.
So for the brilliant woman who's listening to us and feel like she has been stuck in one of these, because I asked her in the beginning, which one do you think that you keep hanging out in? What both Angie and Melinda have shared with you is what's known as a bottom-up response. So in therapies, and it doesn't matter what type of energy work that you're doing, it can fall into two classifications. One is known as top-down, and the other one is bottom-up. And top-down means we start with the mental, then from there we go into the emotional, and from there we go into the physical. But when you're dealing with fear, you can't start with the mental because you can't even access it. You have to do bottom up, which is starting with the physical. And so to move from the bottom up, you need to know what your triggers are, and you need to have a plan of a couple of different responses that you're going to use, whether it might be the breathing, whether it might be the tapping. And every time you're in an emotional state, you are in a suggestible state, which is hypnosis. And fear, you're open to suggestion. But the subconscious will only accept things that go along with the emotion that you're experiencing. So you have to learn to use the fear. And this is where Harvard comes into play, because they showed, two of their psychologists showed, that the same area of the brain that holds fear is the same area of the brain that holds excitement. Same place. So what makes the difference? What are you moving towards? Just like Melinda said, as far as the child having a fear of falling, but they decided the object, the candy that they were moving towards, or the toy, or the person, which is the reason why when Angie gets triggered, she's like, I'm staying here and I'm not moving because this relationship is so important. I'm not running away from it. So whatever we're moving towards has to hold more significance in our life than what we want to get away from. So this is how we convert fear into excitement, into passion for progress, because we feel that whatever we're moving towards is more valuable than what we want to get away from. Because when we want to get away from something is when we spiral down into situational depression, not chemical depression, but situational depression. We need to be able to spiral up. When we spiral up in our brain, then we have more resourceful experiences, internal experiences to access that is going to move us forward faster. But in order to do that, it's got to be bottom up, and we need to be able to have some physical actions we can take. So yes, that's going to be the breathing. It's going to be the tapping. It's going to be an awareness that you want to use the fear, because something happens known as amplification by realization. When you're in an emotional state and you realize you're in it, it amplifies. So you got to choose which direction you want to go, which leads us into the fear of failure, because what if none of these work? So, Angie, let's start back with you again. When someone feels like they're stuck in place and you realize it's because they're afraid that they might fail, what do you want them to know about failure?
That really, I mean, there's really not anything such as failure. It's like everything that we're doing is just, we're experimenting, and I know I would help them to shift the paradigm or belief that failure is making a mistake, that, well, if I make a mistake, if I don't do it perfectly, maybe some perfectionism's in there too, that somehow they're not good enough, or that whatever they're making that mean, like, well, if I make a mistake, I'm a failure. That's the lie. That is the lie, right? That they're telling themselves. And so to help them shift that and help them to see that, no, you're not a failure if you make a mistake. If you don't try, you will, that's possible that you'll fail. Then if you don't make any effort, if you don't take any risks, but even then, like if you decide not to do anything, you're not a failure, because I think we're all so incredibly hard on ourselves, but it's just a bunch of lies. It's a lies that our mind tells us that somehow that we're not good enough, and that we're flawed, and we have all this shame. Did you
Okay. So do you think our mind tells us that? Where do you think that comes from?
The saboteurs, we have these different saboteurs, which are, a lot of them would be the ego, some of the ego, is saying that. But then also, I think there are parts of us within the subconscious that also are wounded, traumatized, or whatever, that hold those beliefs, so it's like a double whammy between the ego and the subconscious parts.
Yeah. Because I'm going to say those beliefs are learned, because a baby is not born with those beliefs.
Right.
Yeah. So just like any fear besides loud noises and falling, and by the age of 18 months to 2 years, those fears are gone, but now they're going to be replaced with something else. So the truth about who we are and what we can accomplish has been accepted by what someone else believed we could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's how we made whatever we made that experience mean.
Yeah.
Through our child mind.
Yeah. And what a child believes is much different than the adaptive part of us, the adult, the mature, the wise woman. That developmental side can believe something that can actually stagnate that growth, where the adaptive side is going, no, we can actually use this, we can move forward. But you can't, as long as the aspect of the personality, the immature aspect, is holding so tight to that truth, but it's an underdeveloped truth.
Mm-hmm.
Melinda, what do you tell the women that you work with and the very smart men that have a fear around failure?
I would tell them that failure is a state of mind. And someone once told me it isn't our greatest failure that we actually achieve the most success. Because without learning, if I make a really big mistake, I'm going to learn from that mistake, right? So if I failed terribly at something, and believe me, I have, I take that as a learning lesson to move forward and to understand where the mistakes were and to continue moving forward. If you think about your great inventors and many other people, rich people, lots of people, they have failed many times to get to the place that they have gotten to. You could read on any of these people and find the many failures that they experienced. So we have choices, right? We have a choice to stay stuck where we're at. And many of my clients come in, and again, it's all valid. They come in from real tragic childhoods, and they have this repetitive cycle that they're stuck in. And they tell me, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be happy. But I have a fear of moving forward, a fear of moving out of my comfort zone. And I say, well, what do you want? Do you want to stay stuck here? Do you want to keep redoing the cycle? What are you gaining? I hear that you're not happy. What are you gaining from staying here?
Oh, that goes back to Angie saying, what a meaning did you attach to this? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, if you move forward, yeah, you could fail. There could be a fear of rejection. Absolutely. But there could also be joy. There could be new experiences. You're moving forward. I just try to get them to discover how they can move forward. We all have different methods. So I try to open them up to the ideal that there's possibilities. How can we move forward? What action can you take? Because we each take different actions.
And you just brought up something really important, Melinda, is there's a difference between possibilities and potential. And so many times we can fall in love with potential, but that gives us false hope, because just because somebody has potential to do something doesn't mean they're going to do it. Okay, so possibilities. Is this possible? Yes. How do we know? Because someone else has done it. There's a track record. See, we can fall in love with potential without having any type of track record. We can see And I know as women, I am not the only one who's done this, where I look at somebody and I'm like, oh, they have so much potential. They just need someone to pour into them and give them the space and the place to make it happen. It doesn't mean that they're going to do anything about it. We have to look at what's possible based on track records, because trust is based on track records. And so, yeah, it's what's possible. Well, let's look in our past, our own personal past, and what was possible that we actually took action on. And we can build on that. Because when someone is afraid of failure, what I hear is that they've been taught there's no useful feedback in failure. And failure simply says that there's some truth that we've either haven't discovered yet, or there's some truth that we don't want to look at. So if I've got a woman working with me, say on weight reduction, and I know that weight reduction is simply, when we talked about those emotional states like fear, is it acute or chronic? If she's having a challenge with her weight, I know she is in chronic emotional states that are disempowering her. And so we look at, what hasn't worked for you? And she's like, oh, I've tried all these diets and they don't work. Well, yeah, because the truth is the diet isn't doing anything to help you handle the chronic disempowering emotional states. That's the truth of it. So until you handle what you've got going on that's chronic, you're not going to be able to move forward in a bottom-up way, because we got to address the physical. So I like what you said about possibilities, Melinda. And then, yeah, Angie, when you were talking about what it is that they can do, we're looking at encompassing their capacity for control, to where we're going, yeah, the failure actually has a purpose. Are we using that purpose? Are we gaining more control because of the failure? It's not to be avoided, but it's actually to be embraced, because it's got a message for us that there's either more to be discussed about our possibilities based on our past track record. There's more truth that is wanting to talk to us. And are we willing to have a conversation with it and dialogue with it? So what else do you think women need to know in their quest for more freedom, Angie?
It's a broad question.
Mm-hmm.
What else do I think they need to know?
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask what you think about this, because this is going around social media, and I want both of your input on this. What's going around a lot on social media from a lot of different coaches is that not only do you need to cut off what's been holding you back, but you need to cut off the part of your personality that agreed with what was holding you back. What do you think about that, Angie?
Cut off part of your personality that agreed with holding you back.
Uh-huh.
I don't like that sound of that so much. When they say cut off the part of your personality, because it's not it's not integrating us, like we're this mix, or this bag of, quote, good and bad, we're a mix of contrast. And if we try to cut off that part of us, then to me, it's like denying who we are partly. You know what I mean? our essence is, I think, love at the root of everything. I think our essence is love. So anyway, I don't like that. But when you mentioned about how did you word that? Like, what else would I tell somebody about freedom? You know, we have to start to get past that imposter syndrome that we've got going on. You know, the part of us that says, well, if they really knew me, then they would think I was a failure, or they would think that I'm not lovable or good enough. They wouldn't respect me as much if they knew who I really am. I think there's so much hiding that we do, you know, we put on this mask because we think that, again, that image maintenance, that, well, if they really knew who I was, they wouldn't care about me as much. They wouldn't love me. They wouldn't want to be around me. They wouldn't accept me. And that's definitely a prison. You know, we're not free. And I mean, I have it. I think everybody does. And I think women have it more than men. I don't know. You can tell me if you believe that's the case.
Yeah, it is the case.
So, you know, somehow that we don't believe that we deserve to be where we're at. And so our self-esteem takes a hit because we feel insecure, you know? And so, instead of running from that, I think it's important that we just really embrace it and not cut off that part of us, not do that, but to actually just give ourselves a hug, you know, like literally give ourselves a hug. And so for me, I try to be as authentic as I can, you know, and be real. Like, let's be real. Life is difficult. It is. I mean, if we deny that, I think that's what creates the shame. Like, well, I got to hide it. Like a person or an animal that poops, you know, they cover it up with dirt, you know, like you got to hide that somehow. And we're conditioned to hide it.
Yes.
And
now, with that being said, I would add on that we share those parts with people who can assist us. I saw one time a woman on social media going, I want to be authentic. And so she took off all of her makeup, and she actually lost clients because she was in the business of image. Okay. Of professional image, online, you know, TV broadcasts, things like that. And it was like, you need to know what your core audience wants. And they didn't want that type of being authentic. They wanted the authentic of what to do when you have fear and how to make sure what you're presenting is in integrity, that you dress the way that you want to be perceived. And so she was being authentic, but in a way where the audience were going, that's not what we want. So, for example, everybody that listens to my podcast knows that I went through a betrayal trauma, and that led to a divorce. I was not authentic with my close friends on what was happening in my private relationship because they couldn't assist me with it. My therapist and my coaches knew about it, so I could be very authentic and real with them. But I didn't take that betrayal to anyone else if they could not assist me working through it. And I think that's one of the things when women go, okay, well, I'm just going to be authentic wherever I go. Did that person earn you sharing some of the things that you're sharing? Did that person earn who you're offering? Because I can be a bitch with people. And the reason why I'm a bitch, they earned that. Who they were. I wasn't open. I wasn't giving because they showed they couldn't be responsible with that. So I had to be a bitch and draw boundaries because it was the only way they were going to hear me. And that was being authentic. Saying, what did they show that they should receive from me? And I was authentic in what I gave. So I think we do need to be careful that when we decide to be authentic and we want to give of ourselves, are we giving in a way that is going to make us secure? Because the more authentic we are, the more woundable we are. And are we giving to someone that's going to turn around and use that against us in order to wound us? And that's why I don't necessarily agree when people are like, oh, cut off that part of your personality that agreed with dysfunction. No, see how to use that part of personality, give it a healthier response.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree with you on being authentic in a way that will not make you woundable for somebody who's going to use it against you.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Melinda, what do you think about what's going around as far as cut off that part of your personality that agreed with the dysfunction? And what do you feel women need to know about experiencing more freedom?
Well, I completely agree when you said have a healthier response instead of cutting off that part of your personality. To address that, be true to yourself. Instead of people pleasing and instead of saying, yes, I'll do this, and knowing inside, no, I don't want to do this. I ask people to set boundaries. First of all, who are you? What are your goals? What are your values? What do you want in life? You have to define who you are. Then you start holding people to those expectations. Okay, this is my boundary. If you're going to come in and treat me like a piece of shit, well, I'm not going to allow it. I have set a boundary and you're not right for me. So by setting boundaries and being true to yourself, when you're not true to yourself, you are actually lying to people because you're projecting this fallacy of who you want them to believe that you really are. It's okay to be you. It is okay. We all have our flaws in life, but by being true to yourself, you're creating your own happiness and your own foundations. So when we say cut off your personality, no, that's you.
That either. Yeah.
Let's just make that part of us the best possible self that we want to be. But first, you have to define it. And overriding freedom. Could you explain that a little bit more? I lost track of that part of the question.
So what freedom? What way do you think your clients want to experience freedom, and what is one of the most important things you want them to know about it?
Well, when you ask me that, it's not about what I think. It is not. What do you think? Mm-hmm. What do you think freedom means to you? Mm-hmm. What does it look like? How do you want to achieve that freedom in your life? You tell me. If you don't know, then we work together to define it first, what it looks like to you. And then what action steps do we take to get there? We can take baby steps. I had a lady that did not want to call on the phone to someone. Well, let's take these baby steps. Let's dial the first 3 digits of that phone number today. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow, let's dial 7. On the 3rd day, we dialed the whole number. And if we wasn't ready to speak, we hung up the phone. So what does that look like to you? That would be my question to you. And then I'm on the journey with you.
And what you just said is so important, because a woman might see the fact that she couldn't dial the whole phone number and have a conversation as failure. And we're going, we need the freedom to fail. And sometimes when we're like, well, what do you want? We might not even know what we want. We might not even know who we are outside of our conditioned and programmed fear responses. And so we're going to find out, and not everything is going to work. And that's okay for us to fail at it. And it's okay to discover aspects of our personality that we might not necessarily like, and that we might not even necessarily consciously agree with. And that's part of our truth, is that, yeah, there are things that we do. There are actions we're going to take. There are things that we might believe right now that we're like, oh, if anybody else found out, they would not like me very much. Well, you're right. They might not like you very much. So where's a safe place? Who is somebody that you can work with and explore that and say, well, it's if anybody heard about this, Angie, that goes back to the imposter syndrome. If anybody knew about this, they might not like me. If anybody knew about this in my past, oh my gosh, what might happen? Well, instead of all of that holding you hostage in a way that continues to harm you again and again, get with someone that can help you explore and discover these aspects. And then, Angie, as you said, integrate them. Bring them home. Don't cut them off. Bring them home and have all of them now have a position in your life where they can actually assist you in ways that can be beneficial, instead of the half-truths and the lies that you were told that are holding you back. So, Angie, if a woman wanted to reach out to you, what is it that you've got going on that can assist her? What is it that you want her to know about things you've got coming up, and as well as your contact information?
It's Angie. I'll give you my email, Angie, ANGIE at harmonyharbor.com. Harbor is HARBOR. And my number is 1-314-422-6520. And my website is harmonyharbor.com. And so harmonyharbor.com. What I have coming up are two things. This Wednesday, I normally have it the first Tuesday, which is tomorrow, but that's the holiday for us in the United States. And so on July 5th, I have a healing circle. It's always, like I said, the first Tuesday, and it's out on my website under events. So if they go to harmonyharbor.com, they can find that. And I give free healing codes. It's another modality that I teach. And so that's going to be on peace versus anxiety and fear. That's the topic of it. And that affects our gastrointestinal system. So that's what that is. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, I have my women's group. It's a women's empowerment group called Women's Empowerment Through Difficult Life Transitions. And that is resuming on July 10th. So that's coming up here in 1 week. And that's also out on my website as well.
Excellent. Okay. Melinda, how can the woman that says, yeah, I want to be able to work with her, what do you have in that direction?
So I work at My Family Counseling. It's in St. Peter's on Mexico Road. It's across from Menards. And I can do hypnotherapy and counseling. I do both in my session. So if you just Google My Family Counseling, you can ask for my schedule or view, me or other clinicians. Just like Angie said, there's so many terrific people out there that can help you on this journey. It starts with you loving yourself. That's truly where it starts. And whether it's Melinda Shelby at My Family Counseling or someone like Angie or anyone else, please reach out. If you're struggling, please reach out, because we all need help at some obstacles in our life.
Yes. And for Melinda, that's going to be in the state of Missouri. So My Family Counseling, St. Peter's, Missouri. One thing I want you to remember, freedom is simply the expression of the beauty that you hold. And the beauty that you hold is externalization of inner harmony. And so if you're a giving person and you're in harmony with that's going to be your beauty that's going to lead you to freedom. And if you have somebody that decides to take advantage of you and you need to draw a boundary, because the number one reason for boundaries is to keep you safe, then there's going to be a part of you that's going to have to draw that boundary. And even though the other person may not like it, that's going to be a beautiful part of you that's going to lead to freedom of fuller expression for you. So the fear and the failure is what you've been taught that holds you back from expressing your beauty. And in its place, you become a food source for someone else to use for their life to get better, but at your expense. So whether it's Melinda, whether it's Angie, whether it's myself, 636-699-7791. If you're out of Canada or North America, you need to put a 1 in front of that. Or at my website, dawnlandrum.com, whether it's us or someone else, you do need to work with someone to find the beauty in the expression and the freedom, because someone else put into place the blocks that are holding you back from being your best. So you need to work with someone to use those blocks as actually stepping stones for your next level of success. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to hearing from Angie and Melinda, how you reached out to them and began to move into your magnificence and your brilliance. Blessings on your journey.